WOKB.
Welcome to Let's Talk Nation. I'm your man, Rod Love, and sitting across the table from me is none other than the General.
Once again, it's on, Brother Love. Hey, man, you know how we get this thing started every week, man. How's this weekend, bro?
Greg, this weekend was something else, man. But, boy, I tell you, we're starting this show, man, just really on a sad, somber note. But we're going to get some things together, man. Greg, when we started this show, we talked about getting what?
Results.
All right, so we're going to get some results. Man, I gotta just shake all that's been going on, man, this past week. And I mean, it just, you just don't get over some of the things that take place, Greg, in the community that we're all engaged in. And, Greg, I know I'm just fast forwarding to some of the things, man, that we're going to talk about tonight, man. And I'm going to ask the Let's Talk Nation audience, faith and community-based organizations, any and everybody that's listening to WOKB Radio tonight, that's on Facebook at Let's Talk Nation. We're going to have a community conversation. And Greg, this goes, I don't know if folk have watched you when you did this sermon this past weekend, man.
Oh, wait, let's not.
I'm going there. I'm going there.
It was a word. It wasn't no sermon.
It was Lady Drina.
Let's get ridiculous.
Lady Drina.
I didn't know you was preaching out here.
He was out there preaching.
I ain't know.
Hey, Lady Drina, what they say? You can't practice law without a license, right? But this joker got up, and when I tell you, he preached. You can feel it. You can feel it.
You felt it.
I felt it.
Oh, mighty Lord.
Hey, and Drina, you know what he left everybody with? And we're going to be talking about this tonight.
Yeah.
He asked everybody, what are you going to do about what's taking place in the world today?
Yeah.
So, Greg,
wow.
You say you wasn't preaching, brother.
Sound like he did.
Sound like he did.
Did y'all give him an offering?
Hey.
Wait, hold on. Listen, let me tell you this. When I used to, because a lot of people don't know this, but I was the founder member of a faith-based lifestyle magazine. And so we would travel around and we would go to like different conferences for churches.
Awesome.
And there was this one musician who was a former professional basketball player, but he actually played the music for the Weather Channel.
Okay.
And so he was out there talking about how there was one particular conference that he wouldn't go to because there's no honor in the honorarium. You get what I'm saying?
No honorarium. Ain't no honorarium.
Let me tell you something. St. James, I got my honorarium right here. And there's some honor in the honorarium.
Hey, Lady Drina. Now, you notice my boy sitting across the table from me.
Yes, I do.
And my boy got up in the pulpit.
And
when I say, I'm used to Greg speaking.
Right.
Greg transcended in the pulpit this weekend.
Wow.
And when I tell you, people felt what he was saying.
Wow.
And if you want to, there's a 3-minute clip on Let's Talk Nation. And when I tell you, that attorney over there don't want to admit it, but man,
but he familiar with the Lord.
He familiar, very familiar.
He familiar with church.
Hey, with church. hey, and who your pastor over there, Pastor Gerald Moss?
Yeah, Senior Pastor Gerard Moss.
Hey, when I say he been watching.
That's awesome.
Greg is an AMEA.
Yes.
Yes. But Lady Drina, he made us all proud.
Awesome.
He made us all proud. But he's taught me, don't open my mouth up about the law because I don't have a license.
Right.
You got that license over there to preach some?
No, man, I ain't got it.
Okay, but we're gonna let him get away with that.
But you got that honor.
I got my honorarium though. I got that honorarium.
Hey, Lady Drina, he came from all angles.
Yeah.
I'm sitting back listening to him when he said, church. Y'all don't know it was 2 men that walked on water. And I'm leaning in and I'm trying to, I already know that one man who walked on water.
Oh, he didn't know that one. Come on, talk about it.
But then the other man that walked on water was the other man that Jesus.
You remember Peter?
I know who I'm talking about. Yeah.
Greg, he brought it.
But people don't remember that.
They don't remember that.
People always say only one man walked on water, but it was two men that walked on water.
One lost his faith.
And started, but Jesus was one that made it possible all the way around. So people don't understand that.
Lady Drina, Everybody gonna learn today.
They gonna learn today.
But hey, but brother Jackson, you did a phenomenal job, man, and you moved some people. But I love how you began, and I love how you ended it. And you said, man, what are we gonna do?
Yeah,
and that's what's gonna be the conversation tonight.
Well, listen, though, before we get to that, Brother Love, we have to let the people know that if they're hearing these two voices, they're tuned in to two of the most influential voices in Central Florida on Monday Night Radio. Brother Love and Greg Jackson, the dynamic duo, guaranteed to raise your IQ 15 to 20 points. And Brother Love, if anyone wants to be a part of tonight's conversation, all they have to do is hit 407-894-1680. Again, to talk to Brother Love and Greg Jackson, two of the most influential voices in Central Florida on Monday Night Radio. Brother Love and Greg Jackson, 407-894-1680. Brother Love, let's get it on.
Let's get it on. Greg, I got to go back. I got to go back to something that you said to the church.
Okay.
But you also turned around to the choir and asked the choir.
Mm-hmm.
You say, sometimes you got to make some noise.
Got to make some noise.
You got to make some noise.
Yeah.
So tonight, we're looking for the entire community.
We're going to make some noise.
To make some noise.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But, you know, before we jump into it, Brother Love, because I am always excited to see Dr. Randy B. Nelson in the wings, man. This brother brings it. I think Reverend King said it best yesterday. This man is world renowned.
World renowned. You're right.
And the fact that he finds it not robbery to join us here on Let's Talk Nation and talk to our 22 million listeners, Brother Love, I think that they just don't understand the power of Dr. Randy B. Nelson. So I'm excited to have this conversation with him. But before we get to that, though, Brother Love, there are a couple of things, you know, just kind of unpack. And I don't know if folks know, but the 39th president of these United States, Jimmy Carter, was just recently placed in hospice. His niece recently said that, you know, it doesn't mean that he is, you know, about to meet, meet his Lord and Savior Jesus Christ just yet. But you know, thoughts and prayers go out to the Carter family. You know, the 39th president, and the most impressive thing to me about Jimmy Carter is that he is the governor of the great state of Georgia, which is where I grew up for a time period in my life. So I can actually say that I grew up in a state where a president was from, and he's from a small town.
Peanut farmer, right?
Yeah, he was a peanut farmer in Georgia. And so, you know, like I said, thoughts and prayers goes out to the Carter family. He is the longest living president so far.
You know what, Greg? You and I, we have this conversation, and we regularly have it because we have people who come through this studio, that want to run for office. We have, I think our winning record, Greg, is pretty high, right? Our winning percentage is pretty high.
75, 80%. Yeah.
Okay. But we often also talk about what happened to those folk that don't win. Do they disappear? and go with me on this, Greg. Here's a president that only served one term. Greg.
And rightfully, listen, man, I'm gonna give my thoughts and prayers out to the Carter family, but they ain't gonna sit up here and make it seem like Jimmy Carter was a great president.
But here's where I'm going.
Yeah.
This guy continued
to be around
public service.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. Habitat for Humanity.
Correct.
Is a Carter-based program. You know, the fact that he returned to Emory University and he continued to teach up until I think he was 92 or 93 years old, would continue to give back and go out and teach. I mean, he was around. He was around.
He definitely around. Greg, shifting gears, and this is another issue. I mean, and also a good friend of the show, school board member Melissa Bird, 2 weeks ago, had a panel to talk about school violence. Talk about the 17-year-old in Palm Coast?
Palm Coast.
You saw that video, right?
Listen, Brother Love, this goes along with the conversation that was had on yesterday. Right now, our kids are out of control. And, you know, part of the conversation I think that we're going to have tonight with Dr. Randy B. Nelson, at least a portion of it, is the fact that you had a 19-year-old boy that went on a killing spree. Is basically what he did. But the sadder part of that, Brother Love, is that this is not unusual. More and more teens are becoming increasingly violent in our communities. And, you know, and I want to save a part of this conversation because I think that it's important to have a conversation and a discussion about it with an expert. But more and more of our teens, Brother Love, are becoming more and more violent and becoming more and more impactful on our communities in a negative fashion. And so the 17-year-old boy, which you're talking about, attacked an employee of a school knocked him unconscious because they took his Nintendo Switch while he was in class. He wasn't supposed to have it in class anyways. And so, just like when we were coming up in school, if we did something, the teacher said, hey, you need to put this over here until after class, or you get it at the end of the week. I know you, I don't know if you remember, you get it back at the end of the week. But this kid decided that he didn't want to abide by the rules. And instead of abiding by the rules, he attacked this employee. Now, here's the more distressing thing about this whole situation, this circumstance to me, Brother Love. It's bad enough that he attacked an adult in a position of authority that had, removed something from him. The sadder part to me, Brother Love, this 17-year-old kid was 6'6", 270 pounds. And the person that he attacked was a woman.
Yeah.
A woman.
And Greg, the attack was so brutal that when he attacked this woman, he lifted her up. I mean, just the impact.
Yeah.
She flew about 4 feet in the air and about 5 feet backwards, hit her head, was knocked unconscious, and he continued the attack.
But here's the sadder part of that also, Brother Love, is because he's a minor, technically a minor, it's quite possible that the only thing that happens to him is that he's expelled from school. He may spend a little bit of time in juvenile detention, and then he'll be let loose to be back in society doing whatever it is that kids who suffer no real consequences do, i.e., this 19-year-old boy
and I knew,
Central Florida.
and I didn't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, Greg, because you're absolutely correct. Greg, this 19-year-old, 18 arrests as a juvenile, one arrest as an adult for minor offense of marijuana, but those 18 offenses, Greg, as a juvenile, and is it the law that needs to be changed?
Listen, we're going to talk about that. Brother Armando, what you got, man?
Was he a special needs student? From what I was hearing, my girlfriend, she looked into it. She said he was a special needs student. And I know some of those kids are, unpredictable,
Well, I'm going to say this. A special needs kid with the Nintendo Switch, I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to say that he wasn't a bit challenged.
Yeah.
But I don't think that he was a special needs kid like the one that used to ride them little yellow.
Okay, cool.
Hey,
Cool. I appreciate
Mondo,
it.
see how you open up that door?
Y'all know me. Sometimes I go down. I don't think he was special needs to the extent of where he had to jump on a little yellow bus, or that he was walking around the house wearing shorts, cowboy boots, and a helmet. I don't think he was special needs like that.
But Mondo, I'm gonna take my friend and I'm gonna help us go forward. Greg, gun violence on the rise, man. Governor DeSantis, are there any initiatives that he has out there as it relates to changing the laws or juvenile offenses when you're talking about violent offenses? Anything on the horizon?
Brother Love, I really did not see anything to that effect. But I'm gonna tell you this, Brother Love, and I want you to open up on this for me just a little bit, because I do know an organization that works with the faith-based community and works with the community at large by the name of the Florida Economic Consortium.
Oh,
and I know you, Brother Love, if you would be so kind as to talk to the people about the Florida Economic Consortium, the work that it does in the community, pulling people together, and the types of initiatives that the Florida Economic Consortium could recommend and suggest to address the very thing that we're seeing.
Greg, in a nutshell, and this is a conversation when Dr. Nelson comes on, he can add to this, and Greg, even yourself, but the Florida Economic Consortium, Greg, looks at how do you build capacity with small faith and community-based organizations. How do you assist with the levers of increasing the capacity so that an organization doesn't have to worry about going out to secure funding to do the work that it's already doing for free and struggling to do it, but it's also the level of accountability and the returns on investment. So the Florida Economic Consortium is building organizations so that administrative part that oftentimes organizations are so into the operations aspect. Great. No organization. Look at the times that we're in now. You got OpenAI, you got this artificial intelligence where businesses are using this, Greg, to cut their operating costs. So, Greg, why not small faith and community-based organizations understand you don't have to know it all. that's why FEC is around. So, Greg, I appreciate that, man. And we'll be talking a little bit more about what the Florida Economic Consortium is doing, but it's working with faith and community-based organizations. It's in Orlando, it's in Apopka, and it's growing. And with Dr. Nelson's help, it's in 6 other counties in the state of Florida working with organizations.
But here's the thing also, Brother Love, that I thought you was going to hit, and I'm disappointed in you.
What's
Brother
that?
Love. This is another thing. The fact that the faith-based community for decades has been the cornerstone of the Black community and has been the cornerstone of where people can go, not just to get assistance, but where young men can go and learn to be men. And the fact that the Florida Economic Consortium has a relationship with faith-based communities means that you all have your pulse on a segment of the community that has a impactful influence on our community, not just for our seasoned folks like you and I, but for our younger people of what we're seeing that's going astray right now.
Greg, you're absolutely correct, man. And, that's on the leaderboard of my talking points when we're having conversation, because you and I and we got relationships.
Yeah.
We got relationships. And, we often have people that ask us, why do we focus so hard on working with the faith community? Well, Greg, man, you and I, we've had conversation time and time again. Man, Greg, we have people that go up, we have people come down, and you know what's always going to be around?
What's that?
The faith.
The churches.
The churches.
That's right. But Brother Love, just real quick, I got to be petty for a moment. I got to be a little petty for you. Can I be petty for a moment?
Just a second. Just a second, Greg. Go do your thing.
It's not really being petty, though, but I was driving into the show this evening, Brother Love, and I saw that the city of Ocoee is in the midst of an election. And the individuals that are running for this election are the incumbent mayor, Rusty Johnson, and a sitting city commissioner by the name of George Oliver. And so right now, the thing about that particular race, that, as I know both of these gentlemen, and I don't know any one of them better than the other, I don't believe. Although I think I do know George Oliver a little bit better. But the thing that's most interesting to me about George Oliver running for mayor of Ocoee is this. If you all remember, Ocoee about 70 to 80 years ago was a part of some horrific riots where African-Americans' lands were stripped, where African-Americans were killed, where some horrific things happened to Black Americans here in Ocoee. And there are a lot of Black folks who don't want to live in Ocoee because of the history that has been surrounding Ocoee since those riots or since those massacres. And the fact that George Oliver, as an African-American, I think he was one of the first African-Americans elected to the city council for Ocoee, is now stepping up and saying, as an African-American, that he wants to be the mayor of Ocoee, is something that that we probably need to pay a little bit of attention to, Brother Love.
Greg, when is that? That election is March?
I don't know. Like I said, as I was driving in, I just kind of saw it and it caught my attention, and it hit me kind of the historical significance of George Oliver being in this race.
Greg, I tell you what, George, because you have 2 African Americans on the city council there right now, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
And I know George has been out there grinding and doing some work, man. So it's going to be interesting. But here's the thing, and you and I, we say this, we talk about it time and time again. Don't sit on your behind.
That's right.
And then wait till after an election to complain about who's running the show.
That's right.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
And get out there and find out about the candidates. Like I said, I know that Rusty Johnson is the incumbent mayor. I know that George Oliver is a sitting commissioner for the city of Ocoee. But really and truly get to know who these individuals are. See what their platform is, and if it fits what you would like to see in the Ocoee community, specifically. And the reason why I mention this here on this platform, because we're trying to get big time now. The reason why I mention on this platform is the significance of George Oliver in this race, in this time. In 2023, Brother Love, we're still saying the first Black, this, that, and another. And that is so interesting.
But something that we have done, Greg, and for those who don't know, we're going into our 6th year.
Oh, yeah.
But one of the things that we've always and continue to offer up is for those candidates to come on this show. and tell people what it is your vision is. What is your platform? So we will open it up to both candidates. And again, Greg, based on where the studio actually sits,
yeah,
I find this real interesting.
That's right. Yeah, we're right here. We're right here. So,
well, brother, Greg, do you realize tomorrow Black History Month is done?
I do.
After tomorrow?
I do.
So, you know, Greg, what has resonated with you for these past 27 days?
I'm gonna tell you what resonates with me the most, Brother Love, is that Black History Month is not as touted as it used to be. Mm-hmm. We hardly heard anything about Black History Month, this year, and over the years it has been dwindling. Excuse me. And I know that we have the parades in January and different things like that. But when I was coming up in school, Brother Love, we had the Black History Brain Ball. We had, all of these things that would commemorate African Americans' achievements in society and across these United States. And I'm not hearing that stuff. And as prevalent as social media is, and as much as people use social media to get messages across, I am so surprised that folks are not using social media to continue to promote the significant contributions that African Americans have had in this society. Someone reached out to me today. It's kind of funny. Someone reached out to me today, and the trending issue today, Brother Love, is hookah. Hookah. Yeah, it's hookah. And brother Ahmad, you ever done hookah?
I'm not really a fan of it, but I tried it. Yeah,
you tried it. So the first time I ever experienced hookah, I was in Malaysia. Mm-hmm. All right, and so I know of hookah because I was in a different country and all sorts of stuff. And so someone was trying to say that hookah was only something that certain people do based on their sexual preference, and I'm gonna leave it at that. And my thing was like, that is absolutely ridiculous, because if you do the research and you see the history of hookah, where it came from, it was actually started by a Persian physician.
Okay.
And, hookah was something that was started back in the 1500s, which would have been the 16th century. And it's over, how many, what's that, 400 years old. And it had nothing to do with sexual proclivities and sexual orientation. But now people are using social media so much so for silly stuff. My point being that the stuff that's of importance, it should have been talking about what contributions have African Americans made, as opposed to talking about something like that.
Greg, nonsense. But you know what? Before, Greg, we bring on a good guest. Greg, do you know that a law was signed today? Do you know what particular law was signed today?
If I recall correctly, Governor DeSantis today signed the bill that strips Disney of its control over the Reedy Creek Special District.
Well, you stay up on your stuff. Okay, you're right. You're right.
And the more interesting thing is that it appears that the bill actually passed 3 weeks ago, but the signing of the bill it corresponds with the day that Governor DeSantis's book comes out. Listen, marketing.
Yeah, marketing.
You can't knock it, marketing, man. That's what it is. But listen, Brother Love, it appears that we have someone on the phone. Call you on live with Brother Love and Greg Jackson. Let's talk about it. How you doing this evening?
Thank you so very much for taking my call. This is Pastor King.
Pastor King.
I want to thank, let me just go say it out publicly. Thank you, Brother Greg Jackson, for that powerful word, for allowing God to use you. And I want to thank Brother Rod Love for his generosity. Where you go, he goes. Both for you all. Now, let me just say this when I get off the phone. FEC, I had the privilege of working with them, and they are a reputable organization that has a plan, and I believe the plan that they have already addresses many of the social ills that we have in our community today. But oftentimes, government seems to think that they ought to come up with another plan. Why would you want to spend money to come up with another plan when you already have a plan to deal with the social ills that we are having? So I'm just hoping that we would take that money and give it to organizations like FEC, and I'm sure there's some other ones out there. I just know about this one because I'm working with this one. And so that's my spiel. Why spend money to create a plan when you already have a plan.
Well, but listen, though, Pastor King, before I let you go like that, as a member of the faith-based community, and not just a member of the faith-based community, you are also the president of the South Apopka Ministerial Alliance. What does it mean to have an organization like FEC as a partner in the community?
It's tremendous, because when we have issues, we can always reach out to FEC and let them know what the issue is, and they always come up with some information to help us to deal with the issue. And if he can't get it, then Dr. Randy Nelson can. And so I've had the opportunity to work sitting at the table with them, with young people, senior citizens, police officers, government officials, and we came up with a plan that's just been setting and really has not taken much root. And that plan is just as much relevant today as it was 2 or 3 years ago when we sat down and created the plan. So again, I know FEC has the plan because Dr. Nelson was involved and a whole lot of folks was involved with that. And I believe that it's an excellent plan and it could deal with many of the things that we are dealing with in our community today.
Well, Rev, thank you. And you know what Rev is not mentioning, Greg, is that Reverend King, although he is the president of the South Apopka Ministerial Alliance, that's Orange County, Rev also developed capacity as a member of the faith-based community. He's provided health education services through FEC. He's presently over in Eustis, Lake County, under FEC, is building capacity as it relates to community engagement. And that's a subject area that Dr. Nelson, with his engagement with FEC, working with law enforcement, working with communities, looking at how do we increase public safety. But Greg, what Pastor King also mentioned and alluded to is a report that was completed 4 years ago. And you were an architect of that report, because when we talk about CRAs, and Greg, you got to give a spiel on CRAs.
I mean, listen, basically CRAs are community redevelopment agencies that are placed in various communities, specifically underserved communities here in the state of Florida. And they were established in 1969 specifically to address slum and blight in these underserved communities. And so there are funds available through CRAs to address the very issues that faith-based communities are asking for additional funding for. The problem is that in a lot of the CRA areas, they only use it for set grants, for streetscape and things like that, as opposed to what it is truly most impactful for, which is finding ways to address underserved communities by addressing the blight and addressing different things that can actually address the root cause. We talked about this a long time ago, but will actually address the root cause of violence in communities, which is poverty and lack of economic opportunities.
Okay, and I just can't let you off the hook. I got to give you some more time, Greg, and then we're going to go to Dr. Nelson. But under the state, under Speaker Cochran, the state was actually going to eliminate CRAs.
That's right.
And we developed a white paper for the House and the Senate that was submitted to the House and Senate. Let people know about that, Greg.
So, I mean, back, I believe it was 2018, 2019 time period when the legislature was coming into session, because they felt that there were a number of CRAs that were not using the monies in the way that they were intended. And you may recall also that in Miami-Dade, there was a grand jury report that had caught a lot of the legislature's attention about what CRAs were doing with regards to the monies. Now, CRAs are still around now, and I think in large part it's because of the efforts that you took, the efforts that I took, the paper that was written, the efforts that the faith-based community also came behind us. I believe at the time it was Pastor King, it was Pastor Bradford, and some other folks that came behind us to say, Mayor Nelson, who said, listen, there is still a need and a use for CRAs in our communities. Don't take them away. Let's continue to allow them to stay in existence. And thankfully, Brother Love, as we sit here today, they did not do away with CRAs. And you know, while a lot of people don't know what we do behind the scenes, you know, let's not be those sad frogs tonight, Brother Love. Let's say what it is.
Put on a workshop.
Yeah.
And that workshop, the genesis of it was out of Apopka, and we actually had 7 or 8 counties from around the state that traveled here. And Greg, you did a fantastic job. I mean, in terms of being a subject matter expert, you brought it.
Mm.
You brought it, and those individuals were educated as to how to be more diverse in utilizing those dollars. So, Greg, we could talk about that for days, man, but I'm going to pass the baton back to you so that you could do the lead-in, man, for our special guest.
But before we do that, we have to say thank you once again to Reverend King. Reverend King, you have any last words you want to give us?
Yes, sir. I don't have no license. I can't give you no license. I can't preach for it again.
Hey, Rev, didn't he preach?
Yes, sir. You got a standing invitation. That's
I appreciate you, Rev.
Hey, Rev, thanks again, man, and keep up the great work, Rev. Appreciate it. Hey, if anybody wants to see Greg Jackson, I mean, and the whole sermon is not online, but if you want to see 3 minutes worth of some powerful empowerment, go to Let's Talk Nation USA on Facebook, and you will be moved. Trust me, you will be moved.
Well, listen, brother, apparently, and I'm gonna make you laugh, and then we get Dr. Nelson. I don't want him to laugh at me on this. I don't want him on the screen when we laugh at this. So we were driving back in the car yesterday, and so I finally pulled out the envelope because I was like, "Oh, I already got me a nice card." So my wife said, "Oh, they gave you a check too." And so she looked at the check. She said, "Oh no, honey, it's too much money. You got to get this back."
Hey, that's Reverend King, boy. Hey, that family of St. James over there, man.
You got to get this back. So that's why I said some honor in the rarity.
Oh, it's some honor in the rarity.
Some honor in the rarity.
Well, Greg, man, you know I got to pass the baton to you because
look at that, Doc. I see him. See, Doc, I can see you laughing at me. Don't think we can't see you, Doc Nelson.
Hey, Greg, this is not just a special guest to us. This
Absolutely.
is a brother.
Absolutely.
So man, come on. That go to baton, brother.
Absolutely. So listen, coming to the airways right now is a gentleman who is nothing short of outstanding and amazing. He is a subject matter expert on what it takes for communities and law enforcement to work together. But more importantly, he is a graduate of FSU, and he also hails from the Bethune-Cookman University. And we want to welcome to the airways at this time, Dr. Randy B. Nelson. Dr. Nelson, how you doing, sir?
Welcome to Let's Talk Nation, brother. Hey, take yourself off of mute. Doc, you might have to, Doc Polite, you might have to help our brother out a little bit.
Oh, there we go.
Good evening, young fellas. Good evening.
Hey, welcome.
Good. Hey, this is glad to be here. Not glad about the topic, but glad to be here.
Well, listen, it's always good to see you, Dr. Nelson. But before we get into the heavy stuff, man, how's everything going with you? Any heavy hitting things that you got working across the country that you can share with us?
Man, I'm laying low. I've been in Wakulla since January. Actually, not even on campus at Bethune, taking care of some family issues, so medical issues. So I've been laying low as much as possible. Every now and then I get out. I'm heading to Charlotte, North Carolina next week, but pretty much I've been in Wakulla County enjoying the.
Greg, this is a brother to us, and he's sitting up here talking about laying low. A couple of weeks ago, he was actually training, and this might be a little name to you, Greg, but training the Charlotte Hornets team.
No, he wasn't.
As it relates to community engagement.
Wait, that's what you call laying low, Doc?
Yeah, that's laying low.
Hey, so that's laying low to him, but hey,
Greg, but I did it from Wakulla County though.
I hear you, man. I hear you.
Hey, that's access.
That's access.
Hey, but Doc, man, we appreciate you joining us, and also we're gonna give everybody the phone number to the show tonight because we want community engagement. That phone number is 407-894-1680. Once again, 407-894-1680. And Doc, I'm gonna just jump into it, man. We had the conversation about the tragedy that took place, and Doc said, man, everybody's asking the question why, when we should be asking the question, how did this thing evolve? Right. That's what we need to focus on. Right. How do we go back and look at how do we stop this from happening again, but also focusing on community, focusing on family, focusing on youth, focusing on education, and looking at how do we get our arms around this so that we get results. So, Doc, man, take it from there.
No, I mean, everybody is high emotion now, so everybody want to look at who to blame. What is it the prosecutor? Is it the sheriff? Is it the police chief? I mean, everybody want to find somebody to blame it, and that's just customary. That's what happens. But I think more importantly is how does a 19-year-old have callous disregard for human life.
Mm.
And no one comes out of the womb. Children doesn't come out of the womb as gangbangers, killers. That's not the case. There are environmental factors, family factors, community factors, systemic issues, whether you call it systemic racism, whatever you want to call it. There are things that that come together that you'll find a 19-year-old with little or no regard for human life. And I think that that's the conversation, the process. How did he get here? Now, the justice system is going to take care of him. That's a done deal. But I do think that we need to go back. Zip code, family. One thing that we did, matter of fact, Rob, when you were the deputy secretary, we went around to every juvenile detention in the state of Florida. And the vast 90% of them had more black males than anybody. And one thing that I always remembered, one of the young men said to me, he said, Dr. Nelson, I like what you're saying. I really believe you care about us. I've never met you, but I believe you care about us. But if you're not going to go back home with me and help me, then where are we? And that stuck with me and still sticks with me today, that we have to take off the gloves and get in and work. I mean, it's one thing to work with a young man when he's 20, 25, or it's another going in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. That's what this work has to be about. And I think that that's what FEC and others do. We have to get in early, because the fact of the matter, I'm called all over the country to do law enforcement. But let me tell you this. So I went to Little Rock, Arkansas last year. The day before I got there, a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old had been shot in a drive-by. We were in Orlando at the stadium downtown on Bowl. And while we were working with Paramore community, stakeholders, OPD, youth, a 14-year-old was killed on his grandmother's step the next day. So I'm all about holding law enforcement accountable, and we do. If you give someone a badge and a gun and authority to take life, damn right, we need to hold them accountable. But the same thing is a mother who loses her son to a bad cop hurts no differently than losing her son to a gangbanger.
Yeah.
Is this and that, not this or that. And I tend to think that we'll tend to gravitate to what we see and not the whole. So, man, I commend you guys for having these conversations, but we've had these conversations, task force, we've done all that. Yeah. It's time to, fest up, man up, and go to work.
You're right. You're right. Doc, you're talking about task force and, Greg, almost exactly, man, 4 years from this date, we completed the Apopka Task Force on Violence, which we did that for 7 months.
Yeah.
And you look at that report and the report from the Orange County Citizen Safety Task Force. I mean, a lot of great information in there, a lot of good recommendations. Dr. Nelson, can you speak to the execution or the implementation? I mean, we know what we need to do now.
Right. Well, I mean, it's not just Orange County. Jacksonville, Duval County, we've completed action plans, community safety engagement action plan for 5 of the 6 zones. If you would go back and say, where are we? We did the same thing with Orlando Police Department, brought in communities from Paramore, Washington Shores, Mercy Drive. Folk came, had conversation, put some beautiful things on paper. But once again, man, it's on paper. Well, at some point, we just have to strap it up and say, hey, this is the work.
Well, this is what I'm going to say. Because you and Dr. Nelson have been in this fight a long time, and y'all have allowed me the honor of kind of just tagging along. I'm like the little brother just tagging along with y'all, and I appreciate y'all for letting me do this. But this is what I'm seeing. We put it together. You all put it together. It's on paper. You give it to the folks that can finance what it is that we put on paper to say this is how you are or how you become more effective in the community to help these young people. And nothing happens from there. And I think the most frustrating thing to me is that it always appears like in the Black community, we have to beg more than they have to ask in other communities. And the one thing that makes the biggest difference about what we see in underserved communities and communities that aren't having these issues or is prevalent of these issues is that there's no problem with the investment in the community and the children in that community. And right now there has been a plan floating around for 4 years. For 4 years. And all it is $1.2 million, I think it was. And it's as if you're asking someone for $1 billion when all you're saying is if you make this small investment, because that's not a lot of money, Brother Love. If you make this small investment into the community, the things that we're seeing with these young men, like you said, Dr. Nelson, where are you? You can be there more, but these are don't y'all jump on my bandwagon if you don't have to, but these elected officials have to do more than just sit back and talk and collect paper. They're going to have to put some emphasis on how do we finance these programs.
You're right.
And some of it, Greg, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, elected officials, they put themselves out there. They say that I want to serve the people. And serving the people sometimes is dirty work because being able to have these conversations and making sure the resources get to where they need to get is a whole different matter. We did a huge needs assessment for Orange County with Forefront, and it came out like 9 zip codes represented more than 56% of the kids that go into the detention facility that we're paying, and even the jails. When you look at the jail, so we're going to pay one way or the other. Mm-hmm. So it's not a matter of whether we're going to pay. But some of these recommendations, both in the Apopka report and in the community engagement report with Orlando Police Department, doesn't require money. It's a commitment to make sure that we're doing these things and looking at our policy, procedure, and engagement and seeing if we're doing it. It can't be a check the box. We have a plan. We're engaging. We did this. We had shop with the cops. It has to be more. Now, on the flip side of that, with the community, it's very difficult for government to contract with the community because we're so disenfranchised.
Yeah,
it's very difficult to go in, and part of that is, I contend, the community has worked with so little for so long that they're just trying to operate to get in. Well, you can't get government money and just operate. There are I's and T's that must be dotted and crossed. All of those things must be part and parcel to the work. But at the same time, the community has to come together as a cohesive unit. That these are our children that we're seeing die. What can we do? And it takes both. There's accountability on both sides. And I'm not saying that whether you're talking elected officials, whether you're talking about the community in and of itself. I think it's about accountability all the way through, and accountability to the results.
But now, Doc, isn't that where FEC comes in, though, where the community does not have the ability to put together, the infrastructure to handle these funds? That's what FEC comes into, where if the government or whomever needs to see an organization that can administrate and to put these programs out there, isn't that what FEC is able to do?
And that's what FEC is all about. And then you have the counter side. And Doc, if you talk about CBAS, I mean, Greg, we're living in a day and age where technology can actually help you be a better steward. But then at the same time, technology can also tell you if you're performing or not, if you're getting the result. Dr. Nelson, you oftentimes talk about, you look at the inputs, you look at the outputs, and at the end of the day, everybody forget about the outcomes. And if the outcomes don't produce results, where we got this many less kids going into the juvenile detention center, or this many less kids, and some things that are real simple, Greg, that we're educating people about, and Dr. Nelson can speak to this, but Greg, when we all were growing up, the thing was, get a good GPA, grade point average. But when we think about from whence these kids are coming from, you talked about poverty. When we think about that, and now, and Dr. Nelson, I don't know how far back this goes based on us being in the trenches, but Greg, years ago, Doc authored GBAs. You can't get a good GPA if you don't have a good GBA. And Doc, speak about GBAs.
No, I think grades, behavior, and attendance. I tell you, and for me, it's not education as we think that you just go to school. My dad had a 9th grade education. ninth grade education. 12 of us in a double wide trailer on the dirt road. But he made sure before me and my brother went to football and basketball practice, our report card had to be on the table. That wasn't someone with a college degree. Matter of fact, he couldn't help me with geometry. He couldn't help me with algebra, but he made sure that I knew the value of education. And truth be told, that's the difference between my life now and my life then. We have to intervene, even if parents don't have a PhD. There are things you can do, particularly early with your children, making sure that they get the work done. That's part. So that's great. Behavior, we know our kids. If they act up at home, they're gonna act up at school.
You're right.
And it's very difficult to learn when that's the case. And attendance, if you don't show up at school, of course you're not gonna have a GPA or GPA. All of those things are common sense. But once again, common isn't common anymore, man. We'll find everything else except, strapping it up and getting to work.
Man, go ahead, Greg.
No, I was just going to say, we're talking about FEC, Florida Economic Consortium, but there are also, some other organizations. I see a good friend of ours, Ms. Sandra Fatme Hall with United Foundation of Central Florida, who also has helped youth, and she was instrumental, Dr. As you may remember this, in helping to increase the graduation rate over at Evans. And so it's organizations like that in conjunction with FEC and with other community stakeholders and partners that can do their part in helping these young people, to do better. I also see, Bishop Stubbs, who's out in the community and working, trying to get these kids away from the gang activity, because folks don't understand. Dr. Nelson, I don't know if people really understand. And you went into the centers and different things like that, how prevalent the gang culture is in Florida right now.
And some of it is really organized gang. A lot of it is young men just trying to find something to belong to. It's not very organized. It's matter of fact, it's not like we think of the Bloods and the Crips back in the day. This is more loosely organized, and you find 2 or 3 folk that don't know the right way to go, and they're figuring that out for themselves. There's a whole lot of damage that can be done.
You're right.
And
you're right.
I think that we need to get back to performance-based. I commend FEC, I commend Fatme, I commend Stubbs, but the work that they do and you show the results for it versus we'll give a lot of folk money, big organization, but we're not asking for the results. So that's what I'm saying. The CBAS, the accountability system is, I pay you based on results. That's where we have to get to, whether it's government with me at the university. If I'm not doing my job, they don't pay me. So if we're investing a lot of money in a mentoring program or a youth violence, whatever it is, there has to be results. How much did you do? How well did you do it? And at the end of the day, the most important thing is anyone better off. And if you can't answer that, you shouldn't get the money.
You're right. You're right. And Greg, I'm glad you brought up Ms. Fatme Hall, because, man, when you look at the work that she has done and you think about the diversity of it, she has kids that are going to the military. She has kids that are going into vocational training programs. She got kids that are going to college. And our famous youngster, Julian, but Greg, she has been doing this work for a long time. And going back to something Dr. Nelson say, the reason why you and I can talk about the diversity and the successes that she had, because we have seen those young people up front and up close. But what CBAS will do for Ms. Fatme Hall and her programs, Bishop Stubbs, and all of those organizations out there, it's real-time data. You get side-by-side performance. You know whether or not your performance last month compared to this month is significant. Yeah. And at the end of the day, Greg, you get 2 years in there, then you go back and tell your funders, here's my past performance. Here's what I've done. And it not only shows you the past performance, but what it will tell you, are those kids any better off, number one?
Right.
Number two, you can look at staff performance, but then you can also look at your overall organizational performance. And then you get to look yourself in the mirror and say, what do I need to change to improve?
No, absolutely. Now Dr. Nelson, let me ask you this.
Have to do the same thing. What you just said, not only a program, government I mean,
Governor, you're right. You're right.
There's no difference.
Yeah. Now, Doc, let me ask you this question, and this is, this may shake a few people and upset a few people, but as we look at what took place with this 19-year-old, and as we look at some of the other young men that are getting into trouble, one of the things we look back and we see that before they turned 18, they had a history of some type of criminal activity. Is this something where we need to take a look at the system and start putting some type of check and balance on young men from 16 up? And if they have so many offenses up through or between certain ages up to 18 that it counts towards, or it gives us an indication of what type of person they're going to be moving forward?
That's a difficult one, because for me, as I said before, they don't come out of the womb doing that. They don't come out of the womb gang banging and all that. For me, it is that we, as leaders, as community folk, we need to be at the front end of the stream before this happens, because it's a different ball game when they're 16, 17. So it's not a matter what is this kid doing now. It's what happened before he got to this point. So I'm more interested in finding out how and why before, because once they're here, the system's going to take care of them. One way or the other, the system's going to take it.
And Greg, that's that story of, you see this guy in the river and these kids going down the river and they're about to go over the fall, and you see this one guy running in and out of the river trying to save every one of them. And then before you look up, you got a lot of people in the water trying to save these kids from going over the cliff. And the guy who started it is walking out of the river, and everybody said, "Where you going? We need you here." And he said, I'm done. I'm going upstream to figure out how these doggone kids getting put in here.
Yeah,
and so that is where we got to go.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, that's good. That is good. Okay.
But by the same token, Greg, there's something to be said about a kid that has a long history, because the Florida Department of Corrections are filled with young men that had histories in juvenile justice. And we didn't figure it out. So there is something to be said there. Like I said, I haven't given up. I'm gonna fight the good fight. But Rod and I knew him when he had hair. Now he doesn't. So this is a good fight. This is my life calling until God takes me off this planet. But there's gonna have to be more soldiers on the field, man. There's gonna have to be more soldiers.
But now here's the other thing too, and I just thought about this, Brother Love and Dr. Nelson, is a lot of times these younger men who are getting into these nefarious acts are being recruited by older people because they know that the younger people aren't going to get as much jail time. And so I think, to your point, Dr. Nelson and Brother Love, I think to your point is that we need to have more positive male figures that are going to counteract these other guys who are used, because they're basically using these kids to do things because they know, they're just going to get a little bit of time, they're going to get kicked out. And then these kids feel like they can do whatever they want to, and then it builds that mentality of no consequences to their actions.
Right. And absolutely. No, they're young men. They're young men that I met in detention center that have been in and out for years and years. They it's just a thing. I'm doing it. I'll be out in a little bit. So you that's just the mentality. But once again, they weren't born with that. They didn't come in with it.
And Doc, with our executive producer, Doc Polite, if you would put that link in the thread so that people can have access to both reports. I mean, there's one link. You click on the one link and you actually get the Orange County Citizen Safety Task Force report recommendations, and you also get the Apopka Task Force on Violence. Yeah. I mean, they're pieces of paper, but we need to execute. We need to do a better job of executing.
Yeah, and holding people accountable. I mean, all of us accountable. And elected officials holding them even more accountable because they're elected to do this. And the work has to be done, and it's all about accountability. Accountability in the home, family accountability, community accountability.
I don't want this show to end, because I think it means a whole lot more when, we know 3 people lost their lives.
Yeah.
And I think it says more when people know and realize Natasha Augustine, 38 years old, lost her life.
Mm-hmm.
My News 13 reporter Dylan Lyons, 24 years old, lost his life.
Mm.
Then you got a photographer by the name of Jesse Walden. He survived, but this guy, he was shot in this tragedy. But then, Greg, man, I tell you, 9-year-old Tiana Major, a 9-year-old, lost her life.
Yeah, her mom was shot also.
And her mom was shot also. You're right.
And her mom has to wake up every day, Brother Love, in the house where this happened and know that some person, and I can't say what I want to say because we're on the radio, took her child's life at age 9. I mean, listen, for all of us who are, even Brother Armando, who's in his, in his earlier years as well, think about what you were doing at 9 years old. You have no idea what this world has for you. Mm-hmm. And at 9 years old, all of that is taken away.
Gone. You're right. You're right. But I gotta say this. Mayor Demings I believe it was Wednesday, he started out the conversation, and the conversation needs to continue. But Greg, Dr. Nelson, he started out the conversation by saying, we all got to be in this thing together.
Yeah.
We got to be united no matter what differences we have. We got to be in this thing together. And so when we say together, Greg, I'm glad you started it out perfectly when you talked about the faith community.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to be, as you mentioned, Dr. Nelson, oftentimes, all hands on deck.
Yeah.
How do we get there? How do we get there?
Yeah. Like I said, that's a difficult one, because just as a community, whether you're a church member or you're in a sorority or fraternity, you get personalities that disagree. Mm-hmm. At some point, we're at a point where a 9-year-old, 2-year-old losing their life. We just have to say the pettiness. And that's everywhere. It's the pettiness, even in our politics, the pettiness that we don't get to the fact of sanctity of life, that whether you're black, white, green, or yellow, Jew or Gentile, rich or poor, Republican, Democrat, or independent, we all deserve a safe place to live and raise our families. Let's focus on that. The other stuff is ancillary. That mean anything in 3 years. It's something totally different.
Wow. Dr. Nelson, man, we appreciate you, man. The work that you are constantly doing, man. We appreciate you, man. And, we're going to keep you in this fight, man. We appreciate what you bring to the table, man. Hey, man. Hey, like I say, stay on the wall, my brothers. We don't have a choice. Our kids are dependent on it. We have to go to work. And then, more importantly, we have to develop others to pass the torch to.
That's right.
We won't
be
in
right.
Right.
That's right.
You're right.
You're absolutely right.
Hey, Dr. Nelson, man, thank you. Pleasure. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you,
Thank you, sir. Greg, man.
Listen, that's why we have Dr. Randy B. Nelson here with us, because we can't have this conversation about communities and how to address certain issues in the communities without having a subject matter expert, world-renowned subject matter expert to have these conversations with. And so, as always, we want to thank Dr. Randy B. Nelson for his time. He doesn't have to do it.
You're right.
And he does, and we appreciate it. And Let's Talk Nation appreciates it as well.
Well, great, man. We're going to continue, man, to, educate folk, but also bring information and resources to bear. Greg, these are just, we know what we need to do.
Yeah.
We just need to get it done.
Absolutely.
I mean, and going back to how you started and how you finished this past Sunday, what are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
What are we going to do about it, brother?
What you got, Brother Armando? You got 15
I was going to say,
seconds.
just one of the biggest red flags to look out for nowadays is children nowadays are falling into the trend of calling themselves demons.
I've seen that.
And so I would say if you hear a child say that, you might want to deal with that right then and there, because usually that's where that comes from. The power of the tongue is everything. So when people speak that stuff on their lives, they bring those stuffs in their lives.
Yeah.
That wasn't that kid that did that. That was something that took over his ways, and it went that way. That little kid, that's not him. You know what I mean? Something took over him, and that's what that was. It was pretty bad.
They say words have power.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say this. Heartfelt condolences go out to all of these families.
You're right.
And I don't mean to belittle anyone, but especially Brother Love, to that 9-year-old child.
You're right. You're right.
I mean, that is didn't even have a chance to live like Brother Love.
You know, Dr. Nelson said it, and Greg, you know, I echo what you're saying. We all got to get on the wall, man.
No, absolutely. So now one of the issues that's going to have to be dealt with, Brother Love, that we didn't really talk about is that there is some, some belief that Governor DeSantis may actually be looking to take some action against the Orange County, Osceola County State Attorney on this one, in much the same way that he did with the gentleman down south. So,
well, I tell you what, we got some more to look forward to, I guess, in terms of seeing what's taking place.
Yeah,
Greg. Bottom line is, this entire community, the country, we want action when we see tragedies such as this.
No doubt, no doubt.
Hey, Greg, I hate to say it like this, man, and this is normally my closing line, brother. You don't have to go home,
but you got to get out of here.
Until next Monday on Let's Talk Nation, please join us. Come to the table and bring what you have with you. Solutions.
Just 6 days after.